Welcome back to Civil Defiance, where we dissect the lies and expose the architects of your subjugation. Every election cycle, what's the one thing that both sides of the aisle, the entire Uni-Party machine, never fail to talk about? Education. They all promise a brighter future for your children. We hear the litany of empty saccharine slogans. No child left behind, race to the top, excellence in education. They tell you they're investing in the next generation, preparing them for the fiercely competitive global economy, readying them to be future innovators and leaders. But you have eyes, you have a brain. Look around. Are we as a nation getting smarter? Are we more equipped for reasoned debate and critical thinking? Or are we becoming increasingly tribal, easily manipulated, intellectually fragile, and fundamentally less informed? The evidence of a deteriorating public discourse is undeniable. The capacity for reasoned, fact-based debate is vanishing. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the great education conspiracy. This is not an accident of bureaucracy. This is not mere incompetence or mismanagement. The systematic degradation of the American school system is a carefully orchestrated Uni-Party agenda. The goal is simple, dark, and utterly self-serving: to create a populace that is just smart enough to run the machinery of the economy and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation and believe everything they're told without question. The answer, as always, is far darker than mere incompetence. It is a cynical, calculated move for perpetual political control. Let's start with the most obvious lie: the money. The politician stands at the podium, red or blue tie, it makes no difference, and they speak of the sacred duty to fund our schools. They pass massive, confusing 3,000-page omnibus bills they swear are for education. But what happens when the cameras turn off? The Uni-Party elite in Washington and your state capitals quietly gut the actual measurable funding for the core resources that matter. The history of education finance is a masterclass in political sleight of hand, the great bait and switch. Since the Great Recession, in many states, funding has been slow to recover, or hasn't recovered at all, even as state economies and tax revenues soared. They use the crisis as an excuse to cut, and then they institutionalize the savings when the crisis is over, prioritizing bloated defense budgets or corporate subsidies over textbooks and teacher salaries. This is not fiscal prudence, it's systemic resource deprivation. Look at the evidence from the federal level. While politicians trumpet a few new, glossy, targeted grants, a report from 2025 details how the administration bypassed Congress to slash hundreds of existing education grants, the very ones that provide real-world support. These cuts included tens of millions for programs that prepare low-income students for college and train teachers to serve students with disabilities. This happens even as they claim to be champions of these marginalized groups. Direct quote: an analyst speaking on these cynical actions said, "Ending them without warning is breaking a long-standing agreement between the federal government and local communities. The money is often redirected, not back to taxpayers, but toward private interests or bureaucratic slush funds, all under the guise of efficiency and reform. They love to blame the local school boards and the dedicated teachers, anyone but the central planners. Federal funding, while only a piece of the pie, is a critical gap filler for poor and rural districts. When they cut that fraction, it creates a cascade failure that no local property tax base can possibly fix. They perform the loud public act of giving with one hand, and then they take away 10 times more with the other through quiet executive orders and complex regulatory changes. This is not a mistake. This is engineered scarcity. They starve the system, watch it predictably fail, and then propose yet another sweeping reform that gives the federal bureaucracy more control while diverting more public money to private, unaccountable entities. It's a closed-loop system of manufactured crisis that ensures the Uni-Party's intervention is perpetually needed. The goal is to defund the public mind and redirect the resources to mechanisms of state control. But the real poison isn't just the lack of money, it's the poison pill in the curriculum itself. It's the deliberate dumbing down of what is taught, what is allowed to be taught, and what is tested. The entire educational focus has shifted violently from genuine critical thinking, deep history, and rigorous debate to compliance, rote memorization, and high-stakes testing. This system is not designed to produce independent, well-rounded citizens. It's designed to produce obedient data points. Let's talk about history, the subject most vital to a free society, a citizenry that understands history, not a sanitized, politically convenient version, but the brutal, complex, and contradictory history of human governance is the most dangerous force to any ruling class. Today, both sides of the Uni-Party engage in a frantic culture war over what history is. On one side, those who want to erase discomforting truths to promote nationalistic fervor. On the other, those who want to substitute genuine history with a new, equally dogmatic and one-sided form of indoctrination. The result? Confusion, division, and an electorate that is historically illiterate. A people without a true understanding of the past are utterly helpless against the lies of the present. Former New York State Teacher of the Year and truth teller John Taylor Gatto, a figure who understood this insidious process decades ago, called this out directly in his seminal work, Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling. Direct quote Gatto. Our form of compulsory schooling is an invention of the state of Massachusetts around 1850. It was resisted, sometimes with guns, by an estimated 80% of the Massachusetts population. Why the armed resistance? Because they knew instinctively that compulsory schooling, controlled and mandated by the state, was at its root about social engineering and factory-style production, not intellectual awakening. Gatto identified 7 subtle lessons that the compulsory school system is truly designed to teach. Lessons that are the inverse of liberty: confusion, class position, indifference, emotional dependency, intellectual dependency, provisional self-esteem, and that one can't hide. These are not the principles of a republic. These are the core tenets of a highly managed correctional system. Today, the chokehold is tighter than ever. We've replaced real civics, the study of government mechanics and political philosophy, with partisan dogma and virtue signaling. We've replaced philosophy and open debate with sanitized approved narratives. The goal is not to ask why the government is acting, but simply to memorize the approved talking points about what the government says it's doing. The entire standardized testing regime is the perfect mechanism of control. It measures compliance, not creativity. It measures short-term retention, not deep analysis. It forces teachers to teach to the test, effectively outsourcing curriculum control from dedicated educators to the testing corporations, which conveniently are often intertwined with the same political elite that drafts the reform bills. They are producing a generation that is functionally illiterate in the essential language of freedom and self-governance. They can pass a multiple-choice bubble test, but they cannot analyze a complex political manifesto, debate a philosophical principle, or trace the historical roots of tyranny. This leaves them utterly defenseless against the manipulation of the Uni-Party. They are producing voters who are easily swayed by a 30-second soundbite and a catchy logo, rather than citizens who demand an objective accounting of their elected officials' entire legislative record. That, my friends, is the terrifying definition of a gullible and uninformed voter. Let's drill down to the core, uncomfortable truth. Why would the Uni-Party want a stupid population? It is not because they are simply incompetent or benevolent bumblers. It's because political ignorance is a feature, not a bug of their control system. The late great social critic George Carlin, a man who saw the truth through the haze of cultural nonsense, summed it up with brutal prophetic clarity. Direct quote Carlin, Governments don't want a population capable of critical thinking. They want obedient workers, people just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation. That, my friends, is the Uni-Party's operating manual, laminated and hung on the wall of every powerful office in D.C. A critically thinking voter is a threat. They ask difficult, expensive, and inconvenient questions. Why are we perpetually at war, and who is getting rich from it? Where did the trillions of printed dollars actually vanish to? Why do both political parties vote for the same disastrous bailouts, trade deals, and surveillance acts? Why do the powerful elite seem to operate above the very laws they enforce on the rest of us? An uninformed, compliant voter, the predictable product of this broken system, asks only superficial questions. Did my guy win the debate? Which cultural outrage am I supposed to be furious about this week? Which pre-approved soundbite should I parrot on social media to signal my virtue? Who is the enemy I need to hate to distract from the reality of my declining purchasing power? The political consequences of uninformed voters are not speculative. They are academic fact. Research from institutions like Princeton and published in major academic journals suggests that uninformed individuals are significantly easier to steer. They tend to side with the numerical majority or are more susceptible to misinformation and emotional manipulation. One study focusing on partisanship found that when uninformed citizens received accurate political information, they systematically shifted their preferences, meaning a lack of information produces political results different from an ideal, fully informed electorate. In a truly informed electorate, the entire scaffolding of the Uni-Party would instantly crumble. They don't need you to be completely illiterate. They need you to be distractible and reactive. They need you to be passionate about the emotional politics of division, the culture wars. So you don't notice the financial war they are winning against your paycheck. They need you to be incapable of connecting the dots between the systematic funding cuts in your local school district and the massive, untracked government spending that benefits their powerful donors and special interests. This is the ultimate con. Keep the people confused, keep them compliant, and you keep the power. They sell you the illusion of a world-class education while constructing a nationwide factory for producing gullible, easily led voting blocks. Every time they pass a new reform bill, they are simply fine-tuning the machine that grinds critical thought into compliant silence. The ignorance of the populace is the bedrock of the Uni-Party's power. So, what is the Civil Defiance response to the Uni-Party's plan for engineered ignorance? It begins with you. You must operate under the assumption that the system is designed to fail you, because it is. You cannot rely on it to educate you or your children. First, be your own teacher. Turn off the corporate-controlled media, regardless of its flavor. Left or right, it's all the Uni-Party's noise machine. Pick up the classic texts, the works of history, philosophy, and economics that the current curriculum has deemed too dangerous to teach. Demand a rigorous, unsanitized education for your children, whether at home or by overwhelming your local school board meetings. An educated, self-directed mind is the single most dangerous weapon against tyranny. Second, follow the money. Don't listen to the rhetoric about reform. Ignore the press conferences. Look at the line item budgets. Find out precisely where the funding is being cut and where it's being diverted. When a politician says they're streamlining or modernizing, they're usually just redistributing public wealth to private cronies and institutional allies. A textbook hallmark of the Uni-Party playbook. The money trail is the most honest indicator of true policy intention. Third, and most importantly, think critically. Force yourself to argue the opposite of your most deeply held beliefs. Seek out the most articulate and intelligent opponents of your viewpoint. If you cannot honestly and fairly articulate why a smart person holds an opposing view, you do not understand your own position. This is the only defense against the constant stream of manipulative, shallow propaganda designed to keep you in a state of unmotivated, unthinking obedience. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as the Uni-Party designed it, to produce workers who obey and voters who comply. Our defiance must be to become unmanageable, to become a population that is too informed, too curious, too critical, and too engaged to be governed by lies. The fight is not in the ballot box alone, it is in your own mind. Reclaim your mind, and you reclaim your country. I'm Otto Bismarck. This is Civil Defiance. Be ungovernable. A quick note on our sources for those keeping score at home. This is your toolkit for civil defiance. On the need for an uninformed populace, George Carlin, governments don't want a population capable of critical thinking. They want obedient workers, people just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation. Academic research on political ignorance. References to studies, such as those discussed on platforms like ResearchGate regarding the political consequences of uninformed voters, which show a lack of information in the electorate produces political outcomes different from an ideal informed counterfactual. On curriculum and compulsory schooling, John Taylor Gatto, The Underground History of American Education. Our form of compulsory schooling is an invention of the state of Massachusetts around 1850. It was resisted, sometimes with guns, by an estimated 80% of the Massachusetts population. On funding cuts and policy rhetoric 2025 examples, Education Week /BROOKING, S-Institution analysis detailing how administrations bypass Congress and slash hundreds of grants for essential programs, for example, college prep for low-income students, special needs teacher training. Quote, referencing the broken agreement of grant cuts, ending them without warning is breaking a long-standing agreement between the federal government and local communities, as cited in Ed Week on Sept. 24, 2025.